I want to talk today about a story, maybe about a client. Maybe this will sound familiar to you, but this is so many people I've worked with over the years. 3 weeks in, you're buzzing. You're so happy you've started doing something new. You're texting me, you're texting the other coaches, you're saying this is the best thing you've ever done for life. You're sleeping better, your energy levels are through the roof. You're telling your husband or your wife that I'm a genius and you found utopia. But fast forward 6 months later, same person, much stronger, much fitter, still sleeping better, more energy, and yet somehow now thinking about quitting. Why? Hadn't slowed down, hadn't plateaued. Every measurable metric was actually improving and still going in the best shape of your adult life. So why did this person now feel worse at 6 months in than they did after week 3? And that's what we're getting into today. Because if you've ever been that person who gets results and somehow feels a little flat about it, doesn't really know how to feel, feels like you should be doing more, like, yeah, I just hit a PR, I just back squatted more than I ever did, but I should be able to do more than that. Yeah, I just got my pull-up, but maybe I should be able to do 3 pull-ups. Maybe I should be able to do 5. Bob over there can do 20. Why can't I do that? This episode is about that. I want to give you a 5-minute habit that you can do every Friday to combat this. It's not a mindset trick. This is something that's actually something you can practice. That was the opening, but welcome back to the Wicklow Strength and Fitness podcast. I'm not going to lie, guys. It's been a while. I put this podcast on a little bit of a hiatus when I went to visit my brother in Canada. That was last August. We are now sitting here in May. The time was never meant to go as fast as it did, as it just tends to do. Honestly, we'd built up a really significant following on the podcast. It was doing really, really well. I was really enjoying doing it. It was really just a case of trying to figure out what was the next step for it and how to bring it forward and how I ultimately wanted to use it. So what was supposed to be maybe a 1 to 2 month break ended up being a heck of a lot longer. However, I now have a better idea of what I want to do with it and, trying to get clips for it for social media. And honestly, the thing that kicked me into gear was the number of conversations I've had with people who wanted me to get back to it for sure. But doing our nutrition reset course recently made me realize just how much knowledge I actually do want to share with the people in our gym and obviously with anybody else who enjoyed our podcast along the way, because it's actually what I love doing. I love introducing people to the gym. I love helping people. I love finding ways to connect with the people who come to the gym more so than I can in, the couple of minutes I see them on the floor in between sets. I want you guys to feel belonging. I want you guys to love coming here, and I want you guys to love everything that WSF represents, whether you're a member here or whether you're someone who cheers us on from the sidelines. So I apologize for taking such a break. Today's concept, as I spoke about at the start, is about why we somehow can grow to feel dissatisfied despite the fact that we have achieved maybe more than we ever wanted to when we joined the gym. And this is a concept I've talked about before, and I bring it up a lot, and I just recently did it with our nutrition group, so I wanted to bring it to the podcast to try and maybe get it into more people's heads, right? So it's the concept of the gap and the gain. And listen, I know some of you have heard me talk about it before, but hopefully you'll indulge me and hang out here for the next 15 or so minutes with me. It's a concept that comes from Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Dan Sullivan's an author. He's really good. He has some really great books. Gap and the Gain is one. Who Not How is another. And the premise is pretty simple. Like, as a human being, you will measure progress in one of two ways. You'll either use the gap, which is where we look at the future. We look at what it is we want to achieve, And we're constantly looking for that. We're constantly looking ahead at this idealized version of ourselves in the future. So it's, I'll be happy when I can do a back squat at 200 kilos. I'll be happy when I can do 10 strict pull-ups. I'll be happy when I can run 5 kilometers in 20 minutes. I'll be happy when insert goal here. And the reality is, for every single one of us who has that kind of mentality, the goalposts move all the time. What is our goal today? What is that dream, idealized version of ourselves today? When we hit it, what happens? Well, we move the goalposts. You've just back squatted the 100 kilos, that was your goal. Well, now it turns to 105. How long did it take you to change that goal? Well, the 2 or 3 minutes you rested in between sets, most likely. So that constantly means that we're upset. It constantly means that we're striving for this ideal. We're striving for this thing that we don't currently have. And there is a lot of benefit to that. Like, obviously, we want you guys to have goals. We want you guys to feel like you're making progress. But, and here's the concept of this whole thing, that's gap mentality. You're focusing on the gap between where you are today and where you want to be, and how far away that gap is. Whether it's 5 kilos, 10 kilos, whether it's a percentage body fat on the scales, whatever it is. The gain, however, is when you turn around and you look at yourself on the start line and you realize how far you've come since you first got into training, since you first started working with us, since you first started working with a gym in general. It is when you look at the version of yourself that started 3 months, 6 months, 10 years ago, whoever it was, and would they be happy if you offered them what you are right now? Would they? I know I would. If I went back to 18-year-old Liam and I said, here's everything you can do athletically right now, and that's your peak, would you take it? I can tell you right now, he would. He would have jumped at it. If I told him that actually you were probably fitter 5 years before this version, I don't think it would have mattered, because he would have been happy with this level. However, for me, sitting here, if I focus on gap mentality, I'm looking at my old numbers and thinking, I need to be able to do this again. Stupid. Right? Both people, if you have a gap mentality or a gain mentality, can actually be making the same progress. It's just that one person is going to feel miserable and one person is going to feel satisfied. Same progress, just a different yardstick. And look, for a very long portion of my life, I was a gap thinking person. It was always, how do I make this next step? How do I get this next personal best? You know, for years for me, it was being able to snatch 100 kilos. And literally for years, I was building up. This was the holy grail. I achieved everything else that I wanted to do in CrossFit. I could do all the gymnastics numbers. I had all of that. It was the 100 kilo snatch. And you know what happened the day I got it? I celebrated for about 30 seconds and I loaded up 105. I'd moved on instantly. And then it became, I wanted to do a 100 kilo power snatch. And you know what happened when I got that? I did the exact same thing. I wanted a 105 power snatch. And I never actually allowed myself to be very happy. I never actually allowed myself to celebrate very much, right? There was literally, I remember the day I hit my 100 kilo snatch, I actually left the gym pissed off because I think I tried to hit 105 like 20 times or something, stupidly. Like, why? I should have just done the 100, walked out and been like, yeah, that's it. You got it. You did everything you wanted to do, but I didn't. I made myself miserable because I was focusing on this gap. If I had focused on the 21-year-old Liam who first started doing CrossFit that thought doing snatching was akin to going to Mars, I don't know. It was honestly the wildest movement in the world to me, and I couldn't believe people did it at the Olympics, and I was looking at it in awe. And if I had have ever thought that I could have done 100 kilos on that, I would have been blown away. So, and this is the thing, right? The gap actually compounds. So, no, like, progress moves your goalposts, and this is something we kind of talked about, right? So like when you first start training, your ideal isn't spectacular. It's actually kind of small. Like the version of Liam who joined the gym wasn't ever dreaming of doing a 100 kilo snatch. It was like wanting to be able to, lose a bit of weight. It was wanting to be able to do, 10 push-ups unbroken, wanting to be able to do a pull-up. Like there was a lot smaller in terms of goals, like, right? And then what happens is you hit it, you feel amazing, but the ideal just keeps on growing. 6 months, 10 months, whatever. There's always a next step. It's like you want to be able to do a push-up, then you want to do 10, then you want to do a bodyweight bench press, then you want to do a double bodyweight bench press. There's never a way to stop it, and that's honestly a great thing. It's how human beings grow, but it's also a trap, because eventually you're going to get to a point where the ideal takes so much longer to get to. It takes so much more work. And sometimes maybe it's just not going to be achievable for you without making major changes in your life outside of the gym or outside of work and all that kind of stuff, right? So in that scenario, now you become dissatisfied. You can never close the gap to this ideal version of yourself. So your only source of satisfaction is from trying to close that gap. Well, then you're going to be kind of miserable forever, right? If that's all you can rely on, trying to close this gap to this ideal version of yourself, if that's where you get happiness from, well, then you're going to constantly be a little bit upset. And the problem is you're probably going to be the most upset when you are winning. Nobody looks back and thinks, oh man, I really wish I hit that 105 kg bench press on that day. In 5 years' time, you're going to remember that when you did the 100, right? You're going to remember the positives. So, like, I suppose that kind of brings me to the social media element, right? So the modern world is very kind of set up for gap thinking. It's set up for comparisons. I'm famous for my dislike of social media, despite the fact that the gym and myself are very prevalent on it. But like Instagram is a gap factory. Like every scroll will show you somebody fitter, leaner, stronger. You'll probably think they're prettier than you. They probably think they're more handsome than you. And your ideal grows every day, because now it's not only that you're comparing you to this ideal version of yourself, you're comparing yourself to this ideal version of somebody you may never have met, that you've just scrolled past on Instagram, and you think, oh my God, they're amazing. I wish I could do what they could do. But you don't know their story. Like, you don't know what's going on. You don't know like what that fitness influencer has done to get where they are. Maybe they're juiced to the gills. Maybe they're taking every known performance enhancing drug that exists, and yet they're trying to tell you to stay clean, that they're all natty, bro. That's why you should probably follow more like dogs than fitness influencers. But I'm biased there. So look, let's just talk about the gain a little bit then, right? So if that's gap thinking, the gain doesn't mean that you have to stop having goals. In fact, you should still have them. We're still going to do goal reviews with you. They're still vitally important. However, the fix is not to stop having goals. It's to change what you measure yourself against every Monday morning. So here's the common objection that I've had when I've used this kind of concept, both in my mentoring job and working with fitness people, is that if I just look back, I'll get complacent. And that could not be further from the truth. People who measure backwards actually have more success. They have more energy for the road ahead, not less. The reason why is that gratitude fuels effort. Frustration drains it. When you practice gratitude, you focus on everything that's great in the world, the hard work that you've done, everything you've achieved. The framing shifts. You stop asking about how far am I from my goal and start asking, how far have I come since I started? Because knowing how far you've come since you've started gives you so much power, so much pride, and so much gratitude in who you are that you will believe you can do more. And that is the gain. You're focusing now on how much you've achieved from the start, and that inspires you to know that you are capable of doing more. So you can have the same numbers, it can be the same question, it can be the same goal that you have as someone who is living in the gap, but it's how you approach it. It's how you're going to allow it to infect your training and your everyday life. Nobody wins a marathon by staring at the finish line for 42 kilometers. You do splits. You celebrate the kilometer you just ran, and then you run the next one. The same is true of any goal. We celebrate the wins along the way. Practicing gratitude, and I don't want to dive too deep into this. Some people don't like it. Some people love journaling. When it comes to fitness, practicing gratitude just means celebrating those wins when they come along and not allowing yourself to instantly dive to what's the next thing that I can do. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up after test week in the gym, by the way, because you all did amazing last week. If you're in our CrossFit group, people are absolutely smashing it, doing such amazing work that I do think, and I know, and I've seen it happen, where people were achieving these brand new things and doing amazing work, and all of a sudden they were looking really sad because they'd failed the next one. They'd tried to do more, and they were putting themselves into that gap. So what I'm saying to everybody is, let's practice gratitude, be grateful for everything it is you've achieved already, and don't worry, we're with you through the ride to get you to the next goal. So, 3 actionable practices that I like to use with my mentees all the time. Every Friday, before you finish work or before you train, open up your notes app and set a timer for 5 minutes and just answer one question. What did I gain this week? What am I grateful for? Now, look, you can use family, you can use friends, you can use work, you can use everything that's going on. Try to include one thing about your fitness. Try to include one thing about your health. Every Friday, I want you to celebrate Bright Spots Friday. I want you to highlight what's gone well in the week. And then on Monday, you're going to do Momentum Monday. And Momentum Monday is just everything you plan on doing for the week ahead. You're starting with intention. And that might just be, I want to show up to the gym 3 times a week. It might be that I want to hit 10,000 steps a day. But at the end of the week, you're going to celebrate your wins and you're going to celebrate what you are grateful for again. And then another thing is, like, when you're tracking this stuff over time, do a 3-month rewind, like once a quarter. Look back exactly 3 months. You're not looking at goals now, you're looking at facts. Like, look back at your training data. If you're using our tracking app for your weights and stuff, look back for 3 months ago. What were you doing? Was it less than you're doing now? Most likely. Look back at your times on workouts. Look at what dumbbells you were using. Look at what you were doing for the gymnastics portions. Probably a little bit less. Note what you've achieved. It always happens. You can even go into like the lifestyle factors of sleep. Like, has your eating changed? There's also something you can do where you can find a photo of yourself from before you started exercising. Not a flattering one, a real one. Like, not you done up going to a wedding, not you looking at your absolute best at that moment, but just find a random photo, just an average everyday snapshot. And keep it somewhere that you're going to see once a week. So when that gap thinking comes in, you're going to look at the version of yourself that couldn't do half of the physical feats that you could do right now. Whether that's doing a push-up, doing a pull-up, back squatting your body weight, bench pressing a weight that it is. All of these amazing things that you've been able to do. Okay. Probably rattled on a little bit. But it's been great to get back doing this stuff. Forgot how much I liked it. Quick recap. The gap is the distance between where you are and where you want to be. The gain is the distance between where you are now and where you started. The gap moves with you. It never actually closes. The gain is yours to keep forever. You will always be that much further ahead of where you started. You will always keep growing that. You'll never go back. Practice celebrating that. 5 minutes on a Friday. Look back over the quarters. Look at past photos. That's your toolkit. Look, we're not motivational speakers, right? We're coaches. We're a gym. But the truth is, the people who get the best results working with us and keep them are the people who train for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Not for 10 weeks. Not for 12 weeks. They're not the people who have this amazing program. They're the people who just learn to enjoy the process and how to stick at it. And that's it. You have to stay in the game. There are people here who've been doing it for 10, 11, 12 years. They're completely different people than they were when they started. And it's important to note that too. And they're always still working towards new goals. They're just never allowing themselves to feel dissatisfied with who they are because they know how far they've come. Look, if this episode has landed for you in any way, shape, or form, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love if you could share it with people who you think could benefit. If you know somebody who's grinding, just not feeling it, they might need it more than you think. If you're local to Wicklow town and somehow you're not in our gym, well, look, the door is always open. Wherever you're listening in the world, I hope you enjoyed. If you are someone contemplating getting into the gym, look, book a free consultation. We can sit down and talk about where you are. We can talk about your goals, and then we can get you on the start line so you can start focusing on your gain too. And look, I'm making a promise. There will be another episode next week because we are back, baby. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you all soon. Have a good one.